Good morning again. We are on to March the 15th. You know what that is? The Ides of March. In Shakespeare's play, Julius Caesar, Caesar is told, beware the Ides of March. And he goes to the Senate and he gets killed on the Ides of March because he thinks he can't be killed because the witches kind of said, you will not be killed by any man born of woman. They can't kill me. I'm protected like Cain and stuff. Problem of it is there was a thing that's named after Julius Caesar, and that's what got him killed. Caesarean section. See, Brutus wasn't born in a normal way through the birth canal. He was a Caesarean. They didn't call it that back then. They just called it opening the woman, taking the baby out, sewing her back up again. And he was the one. And that's why when he died, he said, hey, you, Brutus! And you, Brutus? You didn't know it? Yep. So anyway, that's a little lesson for you. You don't have to pay for it. It's just there, the Ides of March. I'm more concerned about the Ides of April. April 15th. That's the one that worries me, okay? Maybe you as well. And so I discovered poverty again, or I discovered that my accountant has found places where I didn't have to spend money, and I did, and I can get it back. And that's a wonderful thing. Anyway, we're talking about the poor. And in Deuteronomy 15, it says here, every 7th year. Now, you may not be familiar with this. Every 7 years is called a Sabbath year. Okay, just like every 7th day is called a Sabbath day. Every Sabbath day, and there can be more because when there's festivals, that's also a special Sabbath. But work ceases, okay, and you're just there. Every 7th year, this says what will happen. Every 7th year you shall grant a remission of debt. And this is the manner of the remission. Every creditor shall remit the claim that is held against a neighbor, not exacting it of a neighbor who is a member of the community, because the Lord's remission has been proclaimed. Of a foreigner you may exact it, but you must remit your claim on whatever any member of your community owes you. Now, what that means is, if somebody borrows from you $1,000, and they're paying back $100 a year, when year 7 comes, they don't owe you the $300 that's left. It's a forgiven debt. Now, what the writer of Deuteronomy says, and that's Moses, says, don't plan for that 7th year to get out of somebody, to borrow something and then not have to pay it back. You know, if the lender lends you less because the year of Sabbath is coming, then you pay it back as it is set up to do. Okay, and then after the year, you can borrow again and pay it back. In other words, people on both sides could use it. The lender could use it and say, I don't really want to lend to you, and I'm not going to because the year of Sabbath is coming up in 2 years, and so I'm not going to do it. I'll give you $10 and you pay me back $5 a year. Okay. Now, then there's the year of Jubilee, and that's every 49 years. 7 times 7 is 49. That's when, if you bought something of land and it belonged to somebody else and you bought it from them, at the 49th year, you don't own it anymore. It goes back to the original family. They don't have to pay for it. It just goes back to them. It's the year of Jubilee. Now, whether the Hebrew people really practice this is of some question, especially the year of Jubilee. But it was God saying, you need to take care of one another. You need to realize that, well, he goes on to say it this way, okay? There will, however, be no one in need among you, because the Lord is sure to bless you in the land that the Lord your God has given you as a possession to occupy, if only you will obey the Lord your God by diligently observing this entire commandment that I commanded you today. When the Lord your God has blessed you, as he promised you, you will lend to many nations, but you will not borrow. You will rule over many nations, but they will not rule over you. If there is among you anyone in need, a member of your community in any of your towns within the land of the Lord your God is giving you, do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted towards your needy neighbor. You shall rather open your hand willingly, lending enough to meet the need, whatever it may be. Be careful that you do not entertain a mean thought, thinking, the 7th year. Okay, so that's that. Now, the thing about it is as you go on to read that, Moses says, there will always be the poor among you. Now, the scripture begins by saying, there should be no poor among you. If you take care of one another. But the reality is people make bad decisions. People spend where they shouldn't spend, and they end up in trouble and such. So how do we help them? Well, I know that one of the ways that I work with people, and occasionally still do, is I sit down with them and I say, let's do a budget. I will get you money, and I have churches where I could get money, but I would not lend money without a budget. And we examined that, and it was an eye-opener, because in so many situations, people didn't know where a third of their money was going. A third of it, they didn't know where it was going. I had one family that made $1,200 a month. That's not much, but they made $1,200, but they could only account for $800. They didn't know where the other $400 went. And we worked on that. We worked on that. Now, they also got better jobs, but they also learned to live within their means. And that was an important thing. Again, I think of the guy that invented the big earth moving machines. He's he's deceased now, but he's a multi-millionaire, probably a billionaire in today's records. He gave away 90% of his income. He was still a millionaire with only keeping 10%. Now he started a college for kids so that they could come there and not have to pay tuition and stuff like that. I did many things. We have a college down here called Central Penn in Enola. It's started by an insurance agent, Happy Jones. And he made millions selling insurance. And so he started this college and wanted students to be able to come to the college with limited resources. And they do. Now, things have changed, I'm sure, since he's passed on, but that was the beginning of Central Penn College. Happy Jones. And I remember him coming to my college, Bible college, and speaking there. And he was a dynamic speaker. He was going, and such. And you know, when I was young like that, I thought, wow, that would be great. But then I got up and I had to make a living. And that was more difficult. And I found it harder to give like Happy Jones did. But that was him down there. Now, as we're looking at this, one of the things that's important to notice is that Jesus was getting ready for his crucifixion. And he was at a person's house, a Pharisee's house. And this woman came in and started, now they probably laid on the floor. They didn't sit in chairs, although sometimes you see the picture of them sitting in chairs at a meal. But most of the times they reclined, and their feet are spread out like the spokes of a wheel around the table. Anyway, this woman comes in and begins to wash his feet and dry them with her hair. And then she pours ointment, very alabaster jar, breaks it, and pours the ointment on his feet. And Judas says, this alabaster oil could have been sold and the money given to the poor. Guess who kept the purse for the disciples? Judas. Yeah. So he would be in charge of what happened to that money and that kind of thing. And Jesus responds by saying, you always have the poor with you, but she has anointed my body for its death. He knew he was going to die in just a few days. The thing about it is he honored her for her gift. And we can do that. That's perfectly fine. Yes, it is good to sell something and to be able to give it to another. You see pictures of boats and cars that you can donate to a program, and you get a tax credit for doing that. And that's all well and good. Whatever I have that I would donate in either a boat or a car wouldn't give me a break for anything on that. Now, I've got some comic books that, yes, I could donate, but I'm still reading them. So I'm not going to donate them. I'll leave them in my will to somebody. But I have some that I paid 15 cents for, and they're worth $1,000 today, and stuff like that. But we have that. So, but Jesus said, "Be wise as serpents, and as innocent as doves." So sometimes when somebody would come to my house, especially when I lived in Philadelphia, at the end of the railroad tracks and next to a bar, they would come to the house, and I'd say, and they would say, "Can you give me $5 for food?" And I'd say, I can, and I will. I'm going to take you in my car up to the White Castle. Now, some of you remember White Castle hamburger places. I would buy him a meal at the White Castle, and I was glad to do that. Sometimes a person would come and say, "Can I have $10 for gas?" Usually it was $5 back then, and $5 would be a sizable amount of gas. And I said, "I can do that, and I not only will, I'll take you over to the gas station, you follow me, and I'll put the gas in your car." Now, sometimes people would say, "No, I just need the $5. And I say, "No, I'll buy you the food, I'll buy you the gas, but I won't give you the cash." And so, and there were people that would refuse it and walk away, because they didn't want food and they didn't want gas. They wanted it for something else. And so I try to be compassionate, that's innocent as a dove, but as wise as a serpent too. I want to be smart. And Jesus said, the children of this age are smarter than the children of the kingdom. Yeah, we are called to use our head as well as our heart as we follow God. So that's part of what I was looking at when it talks about the poor not being in there. Yes, there is a time of forgiveness, and and I've had people forgive me debts that I owed them. I couldn't pay them at the time. Now maybe today I could. And I've forgiven some people, they owe me money, and I say, "Don't worry about it." It's good. Jesus said you can lay up treasures in the kingdom and do that. C.S. Lewis said, and I like this statement, "The only books you can take with you," C.S. Lewis was a great teacher and reader, said, and he wrote books too, many of them fine. He said, "The only books you can take with you are the ones you give away." I thought that's an interesting statement. The only books you can take is the ones you give away. And so I thought that's an important statement. Now, I'm looking on my notes here to see where Paul, as he writes to the Thessalonians, he says, "Look, people come to you for help. And he said, you should help them. But if they won't work, they don't eat." Okay? And I remember that when I was a kid growing up, people that had lost their job and stuff came to the township to get some help. And we would have them go out and work with the town crew, doing labor, and pay them at the end of the day, so that they could do what they needed to do or buy what they needed to buy. And I remember seeing that we would have them put up snow fence. They don't put up snow fence much anymore, but do that. They would ride the truck. They do grunt work so that things could get done with shovels and rakes and stuff, fixing the roads and potholes. They would sometimes ride in the back of the truck. We didn't have sand spreaders, so we would have the dump truck full of sand, and it would be tilted back, and they would be in there with a shovel, shoveling it out on the icy roads and stuff, because we didn't have, that was back before sand spreaders were in use. So there were ways that we can employ people. Sometimes I have my neighbors come and ask me, "Can I do some work for you for some money?" And I say, "Well, I don't have anything right now." But when the snow came and they came over to shovel, I paid them both. I paid the one more than I paid the other because he stayed around longer and did more. But I paid them, and I was glad to give them honest work. I needed work. I don't want to just say, "Okay, here, pull this, take these bricks over here, and then take these bricks back over there." That's meaningless work. I wanted them to have good work. All right, now, where I come out with, again in the Bible, you've read the book of Ruth, okay? And you probably read in the New Testament where Jesus and his disciples are walking through, it says cornfield. It probably wasn't corn as we know it, maybe grain, like we would know. And they reach out and they pull stems off the stalk. And they grind it in their hands, shaking off the chaff, and then they eat it. You say, that's stealing. No, it's not. It's in the Bible that you are allowed to take the grain. You can't go into the field, but if you can reach it, you can have it. And say, now, what was also commanded, and it's in the book of Ruth, is that you were not to cut the corners of your field. In other words, you have a square field like this, you don't cut this grain here, you don't cut this grain here, you don't cut it here. You leave it for the gleaners. And Ruth was a gleaner. She was a Moabite. And Boaz owned the fields, and Naomi, her mother-in-law, sent her. Now, both their husbands had died, and so they were destitute, sent her to the field to glean. And she went, and Boaz saw her, and he said, who is that? And the workers knew that that was Naomi's daughter-in-law, a Moabite woman. Now, Moabites weren't supposed to be welcome in Israel. But Boaz said, you have her glean right behind you, and you leave more than you leave in the other corners. So she came home that night with a bushel of grain. And Naomi said, how did you get so much from gleaning? Would be just a little bit left in the corners. And they made sure she got plenty of it. There is compassion in God that says we take care of the poor, the widow, the orphan, and the stranger in our midst, and provide for them. All right, well, we need to finish up there and do that. I'm looking here to see, okay, Jesus in his inaugural sermon, and we read it in Luke chapter 4, I think it is. He said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, and he has anointed me to proclaim good news. Sight to the blind, healing to the leper, mobility to the crippled, a home to the disenfranchised, and the good news, and the poor will have good news preached to them. So even in Jesus' message, he was saying, the poor, we are called to take care of them and to help them and to be there. But to do it wisely, not to do it foolishly. To do it with wisdom and care. So from our head as well as our heart, we help others. And that's an important thing in looking at the scriptures. All right, we got to pray now, and then we'll be picking up more of this in the next couple of weeks. Father, thank you for your gift to us. Thank you for your concern for the people that are disenfranchised, the people that have lost everything, whether through their own foolishness or through things that others may have done, or even through natural disasters. Thank you for helping us to help others to see that need. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, see you next week.